Welcome to Conversations Different, the podcast of the Santa Fe New Mexican, featuring the interesting people, places, and issues of northern New Mexico. This week, we are talking to Morgan Smith, who lives in Santa Fe and has spent many trips going to Mexico, and we're going to talk about his work on the border. Welcome, Morgan.
Well, thank you very much, Inez, for inviting me. I appreciate this.
Now, we met because occasionally you'll come back from Mexico and write a story about what you've seen. But let's start with when you started going, because this goes back many years.
Well, I've been involved in Mexico since I was a college student. But this particular project started about 15 or 16 years ago in actually Nogales, Mexico, when I went on a little tour with a cab driver. And unlike Paris, where when you go on a tour, you see art museums, he took me to battle sites. And I realized that I was in the midst of a very violent time. But then I started going to Palomas and later to Juarez. And I realized that there were a number of people there who were kind of at the opposite extreme. People who were putting together programs for other people in need, orphanages, mental hospitals, and so forth, and making extreme sacrifices to do this. Those people were getting very little attention. Some of them were from Santa Fe. And so I decided to start writing about these experiences, trying to bring attention to the positive side of border life. And in the process, I've raised a great deal of money to help these programs. So it's been, I think, 16 years. For the most part, I have been at least once a month until this year, 2025, when we've gone twice a month. It's a long haul. It's always different. It's always quite different than what you read in the newspapers. And I think I have an insight that very few people have as a result.
That's fascinating because you've seen it through the really hard drug kind of war things going on with the violence and the reports of deaths and all of that happening. But you've seen the rush of migrants that came to the border during the Biden administration. You've seen the border completely shut down this last year. And you also seen the human suffering and life on the border in a way that most people probably don't even read about.
I think that's true. Up until about 2019, the focus was on existing programs in mostly in the Juarez area. Then we added to that helping migrant shelters and also spending a lot of time at the border wall, on both sides of the border wall, the Mexican side and the U.S. side, where you could get a sort of a composite of all the issues. You could talk to the Mexican residents. You could see people coming across the wall. You could talk to Mexican soldiers. You could talk to the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol would say to us, "You're not allowed to go down this road along the wall, but since you're here, let us tell you what's going on." And they were always very helpful and courteous. Unfortunately, that has been closed off now. So that's an important piece of information that I no longer have access to.
I mean, one of the things I remember about different pieces that you've written really focuses not just on the border, but on how American policy has been so wrong on this issue, in the sense not letting him in, or letting him in, but about how Congress hasn't found a way to pass immigration reform so that people who could come are able to do so legally. Because that's always what people say, well, I want them to come the right way, but there seems to be an ignorance in the United States that there really isn't a right way at this point.
Well, my belief was that really starting in mid 2024, before Biden left office, he had largely brought the border under control in
Okay.
terms of illegal crossings. And I believe that people should not be allowed to cross illegally, even though many of them are simply have been led to leave. They can come across the border and get work. Their intentions are good. But I believe that Trump should have said, taken credit for this, said, look, I have controlled the border. People cannot come across illegally. But if you're going to follow the law, you should have a right to apply for asylum.
Right.
I mean, there's a difference between people who break the law and people who obey the law. And that clearly has not happened. And I think that is a terrible mistake.
Well, I mean, one of the things that has happened is that the law has retroactively been changed, because we have people not just from, South America or Central America or Mexico who came to the United States, got asylum, and now they're being told that asylum is no longer good. So we're going to be kicking out, people from all parts of the world if Trump gets his way. And it seems like the United States has become a country that does not keep its word.
Well, it seems to me that we could have created a program whereby people who are here illegally, most of whom came here legally with visas and overstayed their visas.
Right.
We could create a program where they would have, let's say, 2 years to present themselves to some federal agency and say, here are my qualifications for citizenship. I have a job, I have a family, I own a house, I own a business, I pay taxes, I do not break the law. There are millions of people like that who are what we want in terms of good citizens. And that would, if they did that, that should have given them access to a green card or some path to citizenship. Those who didn't go through that process, you could consider should be deported because maybe they have a criminal background or something like that. It would have been an expensive process, but right now we're spending a fortune on this control situation. But it would have avoided the disruption, and it would allowed people who have lived good lives, maybe illegally, but good lives, to stay in this country and add to the country. We have a declining birth rate.
Yes.
We need young people. We need workers. We need people who are committed to this country.
Yeah. No, and I've always said, because I'm really fortunate that I've known a lot of different immigrants in Santa Fe from all kinds of walks of life, from Europe, from Mexico, people who walked here, different life paths. And it always seemed to me that anyone with the gumption to walk from El Salvador to Santa Fe, who's not a criminal, of course, would have something to contribute, because that person has a drive that I know I personally don't have. And in rejecting all the immigrants the way we have, or a mass of them, it seems like we're losing something important to our spirit as a country.
I agree totally. And I think that if a person makes that journey from Salvador, or even worse, Venezuela, where you have to cross the Darien Gap, nobody does that unless some conditions in their home country are so terrible that they have to flee.
Yeah.
I mean, we know people in this country who say, well, I'm going to move to Canada or I'm going to move to Spain. But those are not people who are fleeing the country at great risk and great expense.
Right. And they haven't started rounding us up yet, as they are doing in other countries.
Right.
We're not to that stage of the authoritarian project, if indeed it is one.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what kept you going back? I mean, you're retired, you have a nice life. You don't have to do this work.
I don't have to, but it started as a project, and I think it's become kind of an obsession. Because I have become, and my wife and I have become, very close to a number of the people on the border who run these programs. I think I sent you an article with some pictures of a number of these women. Not only the people who run the programs, but the people in the programs or the people in need. You published an article of mine a few months ago about two brothers who I came to know through photography, through just driving down the street and taking their picture and getting to know them. You create friendships with these people. And for me, it's important to go back, see how they're doing, see if I can help them. I guess that's a major motivating factor for me.
Yeah.
And it's become a bigger factor because this year it's been twice a month instead of once a month. And I'm sure that between now and New Year's Day, there'll be another trip.
Wow. Is it getting better, in the places that serve migrants or serve people on the border? There's no longer a crush of people trying to get across the border, according to news reports. So is it getting easier to help the people who are there because there are no new people coming?
Well, there were 4 or 5 migrant shelters that we were helping. And the only one still remaining is called Respitrans.
Okay.
It's in the center of Juarez. And when we were there 2 weeks ago, there were only 19 people in the shelter. Previously, there had been up to 300 at the peak time period. And those 19 people are from Michoacan, Mexico. They think they're going to get asylum. I don't think they are.
Yeah.
So that building and that leadership, the woman who runs it, Gracia, is going to try to figure out another use for the building.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of women in that area in Juarez who've been abused physically.
Yes.
It's a big issue. So the building may turn into a shelter for abused women, which would be a very valuable asset, but it would mean basically the end of immigrants coming to the border.
Okay. On that note, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
We make renewable doable. We're positive energy solar for a cleaner, brighter future for all. Positive energy's the right call. Feel good about your energy bill. Help save the planet too. Your trusted solar company, working hard for you. Generate positive energy. Positive energy solar.
We're back with Conversations Different, talking to Morgan Smith about his many trips to Juarez, Mexico, Nogales, and all the points in between. One of the things you said that I think people in Santa Fe should know more about is how many people there are in our city that do work on the border. And I know you cooperate with a lot of them.
In Santa Fe.
Yes.
The first group I met was a group managing an orphanage called La Casa de Amor. Jim and Pat Noble. Jim was a lawyer here, and he and Pat founded this program. With them was a young woman named Eunice Herrera,
Okay.
who was from a Mexican family but was born in the U.S. She went to UTEP. She came to Santa Fe and worked as a secretary in Jim's office. And I was one of several people who said to her, that is not good enough. You need to go to law school. She did. She's now a partner in that law firm, doing very well, but she continues to be very active in this program in Palomas.
Okay.
Carlos Garcia and his brother Hector Carlos is in commercial real estate here. He and Hector have a very active program in Juarez, an after-school program. They used to run a program called Operation Christmas Child, which delivered Christmas gift packages all over Mexico. They're very active. I'm trying to think of, well, St. Bede's Church.
Yeah.
For maybe 25 years now, they have been going down to the area on the west side of Juarez and building a house, one or two houses. Lydia Pendley was the person who started that, together with a woman who is now in Las Cruces, Jane Peacock. They both work together in the health department. And I believe that they're going to have another mission probably in March of this year to build a house.
I have not spoken to Lydia in a couple of years. She used to be a really regular letter writer in my other job. So that's how I know her.
Yeah.
That's such important work. And I think it shows that even though we help each other in Santa Fe and we help our neighbors here, there's still kind of an obligation to the bigger world.
Yes.
And these are people who are, taking time of their day and their lives to drive and spend money and all the things that you do when you're giving help and assisting in programs.
Well, the one characteristic they share is persistence.
Yes.
All the people I mentioned have been doing this for at least 20 years. And it's easy to become involved in a nonprofit and do a little bit here, a little bit there, and just suddenly say, I'm kind of tired of that. But the programs that I've worked with on the border, almost totally, I can't think of any that do not meet this criteria, have been in existence for a good 20 years through difficult times. And the persistence is something for which you have to have great respect.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think it's really impressive when people look beyond what they see with their own eyes in their neighborhood and travel like you do to go see what we can do to help our neighbors. Because, one of the reasons countries around us maybe aren't as successful as we are is perhaps because of past foreign policy decisions. Mexico, this was Mexico, and we got captured in the Mexican-American War, and Mexico became smaller and perhaps poorer as a result. So there's just a lot of history between these areas.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you see in terms of the government? And is it getting better for people there because of the new president? Is there a chance that Mexico can have its potential reached?
Well, that's been a question I've been asking myself for many, many, many years. But I feel that the current president, the first woman president of Mexico, the first Jewish president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, is someone that I really respect, and I think she will make significant changes. I think she already has. However, she's dealing with a system, a cartel system that is deeply ingrained and that reaches up into very high levels of government. So when she sits in a cabinet meeting, for example, and says, we're going to do the following, and she looks around the room, she could well be saying to herself, who do I trust? Who do I trust? Because last year, a man was sentenced in Brooklyn. I think he got a 38-year sentence for drug-related activities. He was the Secretary of Defense of Mexico. Wow. I can't think of his name offhand, but he was a very, very high-level official. So it's hard to make changes when you have corruption reaching so high in your government and you don't really know who to trust.
That's true.
Recently, there was a murder in Uruapan, I'm not sure I pronounced it right, of the mayor who had been very vocal about combating the cartels. He was at a Day of the Dead crowd. He was in a crowd giving a speech of hundreds, maybe thousands of people. And a gunman walks up to him and shoots him like 7 times. Ouch. That shows you how brazen these people can be. And Scheinbaum said two things that I think were really important that have been almost totally ignored. Number one, most of the weapons that arm these cartels come from the United States.
Yes.
We need to do more. I talked to a Border Patrol agent last Saturday at Palomas, crossing Palomas. I said, do you ever inspect for weapons, cars going into Mexico? And he said, well, we know that 90% of the weapons in Mexico come from the United States. And we do have inspections, but we're so short-staffed, we don't have them very often. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, it's been quite a while since we've had any. The other thing that Scheinbaum said is, as long as the United States, as American citizens, want drugs so badly and are willing to pay so much for them, it's going to be impossible to totally stop the drug trade. And when the president pardons Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who was convicted of abetting the drug traffic, convicted in U.S. courts, what kind of a signal does that send about our commitment to dealing with the drug trade?
Yeah, it's been fascinating to think about the whole emphasis on interdicting boats in the sea that aren't necessarily even bringing fentanyl and aren't coming to the United States. And there's been very little admission of the fact that A, if we stopped gun running, the cartels would have less power, and B, if we worked on reducing demand here, whether it's through mental health programs or, say no to drug programs, all of that kind of thing, or arresting more people who are big dealers in the United States. But I mean, that's really the problem. If we didn't want to buy drugs, there would be no market.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And why in a capitalist society, you could argue they're just fulfilling a need, or, and not that it's a good need and we shouldn't, who wants to have a fentanyl epidemic? It's wrecking the country and harming us in so many ways, but we really haven't dealt with our own need for stimulants and mind altering substances. So.
Well, let me say a word about the boats.
Okay.
I know a man who actually lives in Albuquerque, a former DEA agent, who says it's clear that these boats, for the most part, are not drug boats. And the reason for that is that the purpose of a drug boat is to carry as much drugs as possible. And that means having the smallest crew possible, at most two people. So if you've got more than two people in there, there's a presumption it's not a drug boat, because those extra people are taking up space for very valuable drugs. So I think that whole process is completely illegal.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting judgment after this administration ends to see, whether the World Court or the United Nations or whoever gets involved to say what you did was not according to the international law.
Yeah.
Ooh. On that note, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Looking to reach a wider audience and grow your business? For 175 years, the Santa Fe New Mexican has been the trusted voice of Santa Fe, with unmatched local reach in print and online. In addition to our long-standing, independent, family-owned newspaper, we have a full-fledged marketing team with the expertise to help you succeed in the 21st century. From traditional print to precision-targeted digital advertising, we have the tools to connect you with your ideal customers. Partner with us and see the results for yourself. Advertise with the Santa Fe New Mexican and unlock your business's full potential. Visit us at santafenewmexican.com/advertising or call us at 505-995-3852. Thank you.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Morgan Smith about his many trips to Mexico and what he has found there. One of the things I love about the stories you write that I publish in the opinion section very regularly is just how resilient and strong of people are under horrible circumstances. I just admire so much that they're not giving up. The people who help them aren't giving up, and you see hopefully, some progress and people having better lives, the lives they deserve.
Well, I totally agree because the border area where we go has very little in terms of the government services that are taken for granted here. So these people are filling a gap. For example, in the area on the west side of Juarez, where there are like four or five different programs we try to help. I've driven around that area as like 15 years now, and I've never seen any sign of medical care, an ambulance, visiting nurses, things like that. The only medical care is provided by volunteer doctors and nurses from El Paso and Las Cruces, who have a monthly clinic down there. So the need is enormous. Now, I think that Claudia Sheinbaum is going to reach out and try to change that. But at the moment, she's struggling with her relationship with President Trump, the cartels, things like that. So she can't do everything.
No.
But these people are, I know, many of them are religiously based, not church based, but kind of spiritually based. I'm not. I just do this because I believe in it. But the spirituality is a factor in helping them persist under very difficult circumstances.
Do people there talk about, or are they worried about some of the kind of implied and not even implied threats that the president has said, we can attack in Mexico if we need to, because those drugs are, they're basically, he's declared war on the cartels. So is there any worry that there will actually be strikes?
Not among the people I work with. I mean, they're not involved in drugs that, they're just, they have their day-to-day work, whether it's caring for the mentally ill or education or whatever it might be. Not really.
That's good. Yeah, that's one of those things that you hear and you think, well, that really can't happen or it won't happen. And then you see the boats and you wonder, to what degree will it spread? And I mean, we've already seen troops on the border, and we've seen the wall go up, even though it's very expensive and stops wildlife and can be navigated around. I wonder, is the wall in good shape or is it going to fall down anytime soon?
Well, the wall that I know best is the wall between Sunland Park and Anapra. And I've been there dozens of times. Can't go there anymore.
Right.
But to the west, towards Santa Teresa, they're building a second wall. So there'll be two walls.
Oh, goodness.
That I do not understand, because there are ways to fortify the existing wall. It's in pretty good shape. That would be much less expensive. And I've written the Border Patrol agents I know and asked them, they'll take me on another tour and help me understand why a second wall is being built. There are also soldiers there from the 4th Infantry Division in Fort Carson, Colorado. And they have these Stryker vehicles, which is a kind of halfway between a tank and a Humvee. And we went, you published an article of mine. We got permission after many months to go talk to the soldiers and photograph the vehicles. And they were pretty enthusiastic at the time. But I would like to go back and talk to them again, because they're up on a hilltop in rough weather, looking down into Anapra, saying, we're going to stop anyone from crossing. But there's nobody trying to cross. So the boredom factor must be tremendous.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get a trip with Border Patrol to see how these guys feel now that they've been sitting there looking and not seeing anything to deal with.
So I guess you could say it's a success if you believe that people crossing at the border illegally or even as asylum seekers was bad. We've now solved that problem. But we still haven't addressed how people can come here legally in big enough numbers to help our declining birth rate, fill jobs that Americans won't do and that kind of thing.
Well, I think this is so simple. I don't know why we even need to talk about it. You shut off the illegal entries, and you have a process, really two processes, for people to come legally. One is asylum, and the other one you mentioned, work, expanded number of work permits, and a process for work permits is less cumbersome. And, that would cost a lot less money. It would give the people who are obeying the law some relief, and it would help a lot of farmers, construction companies, restaurants, people who rely heavily on migrant labor.
Yeah, I remember when I was in college and my parents had just moved back to New Mexico and were living on a ranch. The neighbors around them used agricultural help. And many of those people came from Mexico in the summers and then went home in the winters. And I don't think it was necessarily a legal process, but it wasn't a complicated process. And there was a lot of mobility back and forth across the border of the type that we don't have as easily today. And I don't know what our neighbors would have done without that help. So how can we not look into finding ways for people to work, and then maybe they get to go home where they want to be anyway?
Well, I think that's a good point. My sister had a small ranch near Carbondale, Colorado, and she had a couple of guys who came up every summer and worked on her ranch. It was a very smooth process at that time. One year, they said to her, "Sandy, we're not coming this year. And the reason we're not coming is that we have made enough money to buy land in our hometown in Mexico." That was our goal. We never wanted to invade your country, be residents of your country. We wanted to make enough money so we could have a decent life in our own country. And many of these workers, that's what they want, seasonal work. And the money goes into refurnishing their houses, buying a better truck, doing the things to help their families back in Mexico.
Yeah, it helps pay tuition for their kids to go to school,
Exactly.
all of the things that improve your life.
Exactly.
And if we make passing across the border easier, I think both countries would end up being stronger. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's interesting how we approach immigration and how it changes over the years to the point that we kind of are cutting our noses off to spite our faces.
Well, I think the solutions are fairly simple and fairly obvious.
Right.
But they're so wrapped up in this bitter political battle that nobody dares make a move.
No,
Neither
and
party.
And I think, Obama, made a critical mistake as president because he thought if he showed that Democrats would be for enforcement, Republicans would move on pathways to citizenship and reforming the whole system. And it turned out that he deported more than anybody, and we never got any progress on the reforms.
Yes.
And as a result, we're stuck. And it's ridiculous to have a Congress that cannot pass a simple piece of legislation. We're just in a mess.
Well, the one president who I think understood this and who I think might have gotten something accomplished if it hadn't been for 9/11 was George Bush Jr. Because he understood what border life was like.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone since then really has.
No, because to the current president, it's just the brown horde coming that he wants to stop. And to others, I think it was more of an abstraction, but Bush was from a border state and he knew, the importance of a healthy border. I mean,
Yeah.
because you've got cities that sprawl across lines, and how can you say to someone, in Ciudad Acuña or Del Rio, you can't cross over?
Yeah.
It's just, I don't think we understand unless we've lived in those areas.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how can people help you in your work if they want to?
Well, there are a lot of people in Santa Fe who give us items to take to
Okay.
Mexico. Every time we go down, we take a load of clothing, shoes, toys, books, things like that, and that's very helpful. Sometimes it's tough getting across the border. I've been stopped by the Mexican soldiers and warned that I'm doing something illegal, they say.
Oh.
And I try to just act stupid and humble and get through. But often now we take a load to a homeless shelter in El Paso called Opportunity Center. And then we'll drive across the border, go to a grocery store near the Respitrans shelter, take one of the residents, buy food for them. And then last time we went, we actually got another load at the Walmarts in El Paso, food. So we're always taking stuff. We never go with an empty car. And the stuff that's given to us by many friends and neighbors here in Santa Fe is very helpful. We get donations. Sometimes someone will, I gave a talk a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of people just handed me cash, that we can, there's one program that we go to that doesn't have any structure for receiving checks. So I take cash to them. So there's always need, and we go to a number of places, and sometimes it doesn't work out in one place. We just go to the next one. I mean, we never take a load down there and don't find a good use for it.
Good.
Yeah.
I think that's just a beautiful way to share of our excess in this country, and make sure that things are being used and don't end up in the landfill. So that's a great way to help people. Is there anything that you want people to know as we kind of close out about what you're doing and what they might think about in their own lives, and if they want to help or whatever?
Well, most of all, I want people who might listen to this or read an article I've written in, one of a number of newspapers. I want them to realize that these people we work with are human beings. The ones who run these programs, but also the ones who are served, even the mental patients, to whom I've become quite close in many cases. They're human beings, and there's more to what goes on in the border than just the numbers you read in the newspaper. And if they're treated like human beings, which obviously the current president isn't willing to do, that will make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Any donations are always welcome, always welcome. And when you run an article of mine, you usually put my email in there, and that runs that gets a lot of attention.
Good.
People can write, people can contact me.
Okay. So look for his articles. We have another one coming up in the next week or two, I believe. And you'll keep telling us what you see in Mexico on your trips, and we appreciate that so much. And this has been another Conversations Different. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to Conversations Different, hosted by me, Inez Russell Gomez, editorial page editor for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our weekly episodes would not be possible without your support. We hope you enjoy them and keep listening. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Consider signing up for our newsletter so you never miss an episode, and while you're at it, consider subscribing to the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our podcast is available by visiting our website, santafenewmexican.com/podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Conversations Different with Inez Russell Gomez is produced by Matt Dalside and Ernesto Cisneros, published by the Santa Fe New Mexican, a local and independent newspaper owned by Robin Martin.